to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Baugh, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. Today's program is vitally important. The title is The Gaps Are Enormous. There's a reason for this title and a reason for this program that we need to work hard to communicate to you. You're going to hear some strange terms from my guest, who is a very qualified academic and scholar. You're going to hear some strange terms, but the concept that he's going to get across is vitally important, and it is as follows. Charles Darwin has become the icon and the father of modern evolutionary thought. Now, the concepts that he gave were not new. They were recognized originally among the Babylonians, and then among the Greeks, and then plagiarized and adopted by Charles Darwin. And in this generation, he's given credit for that which does not academically hold sufficient evidence to even qualify as a good hypothesis, let alone a theory, and yet in many areas it is taught as being factual. You understand there are three gradations to a concept. There's an hypothesis, which is a guess. Sometimes it's an educated guess. Then once some of the wrinkles are worked out of that hypothesis, then it is asserted as a theory. And if the theory has been demonstrated to be scientific in all of its basic tenets, it becomes a law. Well, today, evolutionary theory is taught as a law of biological progression. In fact, the new definition for living systems is that it must have the capability of evolving into a higher order. There is no factual evidence justifying that position. So I want you to know where we really are. We have the hypothesis, which is a guess, sometime an educated guess, sometime a wild guess that has to be discarded quite rapidly. Then we have a graduation from that, or a modification of that, if field experiment and laboratory experimentation justify it, to a theory. And if that theory holds water in every dimension and is demonstrated scientifically to be universal in its application, it becomes a law or a fact. Well, we're going to show that, as Charles Darwin asserted, if his theory could not be justified in actual field experiments to show small, mutational, progressive variations from a lower life form progressively through the chain, ultimately to man, if that could not be demonstrated to be a long series of progressive micro changes, then he said, my theory would be utterly destroyed. Well, Charles, we have some news for you. The gaps between living systems, the gaps are enormous. And by the way, there is no such thing as primitive life. As we're going to find from this paleontologist who has examined, has excavated, has studied from trilobites all the way to the lower primates, and has excavated dinosaurs with me in Colorado, we're going to learn that there is no progressive development of living systems. There's no such thing as primitive life form. All living systems are incredibly complex. Would you welcome to your minds and hearts Dr. Floyd Nolan Jones. Professor Jones, it's a delight to have you back.
Good to see you, brother. Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, you've been on the program so many times, this audience knows you're my twin.
Yes.
You're my alter ego. I'm your alter ego. But not only that, we were born, different parents, different states, born on the same day a few decades ago.
Same day, same month, same year.
That is right.
So I know exactly how old you are.
Yes, you do. And we're not sure who's the oldest, and it doesn't really matter because both of us, Floyd, you went through a professional period of your life when you embraced evolutionary thought. Is that correct?
Yes, I was an evolutionist, and I taught evolution theory at the university.
Yes. In fact, as a paleontologist, as a student, you were offered the chair of the entire department of paleontology at a major university.
That's correct. University of Missouri, when I last noted, was a major university.
Oh, yes, and still is.
It never happened, though, Carl, and the thing that got in the way was money.
Oh, yeah, well, that gets in the way of a lot of our programs, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now, you were a regional geophysicist. You have taught geology at the university level. You have taught paleontology at the university level. You're an experienced paleontologist. You've excavated dinosaurs with me, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Now,
we found some pretty good ones.
Yes, we did. And you're schooled in invertebrate paleontology as well. And I mentioned at the top of the program, there are no primitive living systems. The trilobites are introduced by the evolutionary community as being an early primitive life form. Yet, the eye of the trilobite is incredibly complex.
As complex as anything we've ever seen.
In fact...
and yet it's supposed to be about 550 million years old.
Oh, isn't that a major problem for the hypothesis of evolution?
Yes.
Do you agree with me that evolution, once we know all the data, and I'm in favor of evolution being taught in the public school system with its strengths and weaknesses, the only strength of evolution is that major professors teach it and hold to it as a philosophic tenet. But when we get to the actual evidence supporting evolution, its weakness is demonstrated in that, would you agree with this? Its weakness is demonstrated in that if we're talking about microevolution, variation within genetic boundaries, that's no problem.
Yeah, that's like mosquitoes becoming resistant to DDT or something on that order. That's a horizontal change.
Yes.
But evolution theory teaches a vertical change from less complex to more and more complex to higher orders of order and complexity. That is not what we see. We only see that the genome, the genetic code, has room leeway in it that if conditions change a little bit, the creature can adapt rather than becoming extinct overnight.
Yes, it's adaptation, and all of that was written into the code by the Creator himself.
He knew what was going to happen.
Oh, yes. In fact, you have been observant. You've been attending the museum for decades now.
Yes.
In fact, you get quite excited when you get some new evidence. You have seen the experiments in the biosphere where we've actually altered the environmental conditions and have altered the expression, the protein expression of living systems as verified in the laboratory. But all of that was programmed into the genome to begin with.
Correct.
Now, because when you're having fun, time races rapidly.
Oh, yes. We've got things to show them.
Yes, and let's lay out the concept. According to evolutionary theory, this geologic column, the Tower of Time, as a professional illustration of evolution, is the Bible. It's the paradigm, it's the Bible of evolutionary theory. And as Darwin stated, if we could not, over a period of time with further excavations, if we could not demonstrate that one living system micro-mutated, changed, adapted, and developed into a higher order progressively, if we could not see this consistently throughout the geologic column, ultimately leading to the appearance of man, then he said, using his own words, his theory would be utterly destroyed.
Absolutely. And he patted himself on the back when he called it a theory.
Yes, he did.
As you pointed out at the beginning.
It's just a hypothesis, that's a guess. Theory deserves some merit and some field and laboratory experimentation. And of course, it's taught as fact or a law today, the law of evolutionary development, and that's very tragic. So again, the audience needs to know that Dr. Jones is going to take us through supposed primitive life forms and demonstrate that the gaps between those forms, the gaps are enormous between each of the phyla and classifications.